Picture this. It's 2023, and a North Carolina eye surgeon just wants to perform more surgeries in his own office using equipment he already owns. Makes sense, right? Well, 3 nearby hospitals objected. And get this, in 2025, a state court actually sided with them. Why? It wasn't because the surgeon was unsafe. It's because a law from the 1970s literally says he needs a permission slip from the exact same people he'd be competing with. You see, that's not a bug in the American healthcare system. It's much closer to the operating system itself. Welcome to This Explainer. For the next few minutes, we're going to follow the money right through the medical rulebook, using hard data to figure out exactly who wrote it. All right, let's dive in.
Let's start with the numbers, because honestly, they're almost too strange to believe. $14,885. That is the average American healthcare bill every single year per person. That's enough to buy a decent used car annually. It's a massive financial gap compared to the rest of the world, and it really sets the stage for a paradox we need to unpack today.
To put that spending into perspective, while we're dropping nearly 15 grand per person, the average across every other wealthy country in the OECD is just under $6,000. We are spending 2.5 times more. In fact, 17.2% of our entire economy goes straight to healthcare. But here is the kicker. For all that cash, Americans only get about 2.7 doctors per 1,000 people, while the OECD average is pushing 4. And our life expectancy? It's sitting at 78 to 79 years. That's actually 2 to 3 years shorter than the OECD average, and shorter than almost every country we would typically call a peer.
So this brings us to the absolute core question of this explainer. Why does more money equal worse outcomes? I mean, normally in a market, more money in means a better product out, right? That's how smartphones and cars have worked for decades. But healthcare seems to be the one place in the American economy where that relationship has just completely snapped. So here's the theory we're going to test today. It's not that no one is in charge, it's that the market is actually malfunctioning by design.
To really grasp what's going on, we need to look at 2 academic concepts. First up is regulatory capture. This is a term from back in 1971, and it describes what happens when a regulator basically starts working for the very industry it's supposed to be policing. But there's an even stronger term we need to talk about: state capture. This was coined in the year 2000 to describe how oligarchs, or sometimes entire industries, essentially rewire governments to serve their own interests. We need to keep both of these concepts in mind today, because what you're about to see isn't just confined to one rogue regulator. It's happening literally everywhere.
Okay, let's start with the most literal example of manufacturing scarcity: Certificate of Need, or CON laws. Believe it or not, 35 states and Washington, D.C. still require these. Here's how it works. If you want to open a new surgery center or even just add hospital beds, your competitors literally get a formal seat at the hearing to block you. It's exactly like that 2025 case of the North Carolina eye surgeon, Dr. Singleton, that we mentioned earlier. And the research here is super clear. Out of 45 studies on spending, 60% link CON laws to higher costs. And out of 89 studies on access, 79% link them to reduced access. By handing legal monopolies to the people who already have them, we are artificially limiting supply.
And this restricted supply, it extends right into the workforce, where we are projecting a staggering shortfall of 86,000 physicians by the year 2036. You'd think, well, if we need more doctors, let's just train more, right? But to practice, every doctor needs a residency. And get this, back in 1997, Congress capped the number of Medicare-funded residency slots because they incorrectly worried we'd have a doctor surplus. A surplus. And here we are, almost 30 years later, and practically nobody in Washington has spent the political capital to fully undo that freeze. It's this massive bottleneck holding back tens of thousands of doctors we desperately need.
We see this same rapid mobilization to restrict supply in other areas too. In April 2024, the FTC tried to ban non-compete clauses. These clauses were binding about 45% of doctors, literally preventing them from practicing near their former employers. The FTC estimated this ban would save patients $194 billion. But, surprise, surprise, the hospital lobbies sued immediately. By August 2024, a federal judge blocked it, and by September 2025, the FTC completely withdrew the appeal. So in just 17 months, the industry mobilized and killed $194 billion in potential savings.
Section 1. The price nobody can see. Enter the pharmacy benefit managers. The sheer concentration of power here is absolutely wild. Just 3 PBMs, CVS Caremarks, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, control roughly 80% of all prescriptions filled in America. And they're owned by the exact same mega corporations that own major health insurers and the pharmacies filling the scripts. It's like having the referee, the player, and the scorekeeper all on the same payroll. And it pays off. According to FTC staff reports, this setup generated over $7.3 billion in excess revenue from 2017 to 2022. Some individual drug markups? They were exceeding 4,000% above cost. 4,000%.
And of course, those hidden prices don't stop at the pharmacy counter. 90% of hospital markets are highly concentrated. In fact, about 1 in 5 hospital mergers are basically unchecked antitrust problems that add an estimated $200 million a year to our bills. Then you have the drugs themselves. Did you know 78% of new drug patents are just minor tweaks to existing drugs? It's a trick to reset the patent clock, a process called evergreening. Add in what they call pay-for-delay settlements, which is exactly what it sounds like. Brand name companies paying generic rivals not to compete, and it's costing patients and taxpayers an estimated $3.5 billion every single year.
Section 2, Case Study. United Health Group.
Let's zero in on a specific example. In January 2026, a bipartisan Senate Judiciary Committee report led by Senator Chuck Grassley analyzed something like 50,000 pages of internal documents. What they found was that United Health had a dedicated workforce just for upcoding. That basically means digging up every diagnosis code possible to legally squeeze more money out of the government. And boy, did it work. Over 3 years, patients in traditional Medicare saw their official sickness scores increase by about 12%. But patients seen by United Health's employed doctors, their sickness scores skyrocketed by 71%. That little spike triggered an average of $2,735 in extra federal payments per in-home visit.
Now, the crucial takeaway here is that this isn't just one rogue bad actor. This is an industry-wide incentive problem. The government watchdog MedPAC estimates $76 billion in Medicare Advantage overpayments across the entire industry for 2026 alone. $76 billion. Right now, United Health is under simultaneous civil and criminal DOJ investigations. And just to show you how baked into the system this is, even a nonprofit, Kaiser Permanente, agreed to pay $556 million in January 2026 to settle nearly identical upcoding allegations. The system literally incentivizes this behavior.
Which brings us to the financial gravity keeping this whole structure glued together. The health sector spent an astounding $653 million on federal lobbying in 2025 alone. That is a 16% jump in just one single year. They consistently outspend every other industry in America, hands down. So this isn't just, standard participation in democracy. This is a massive financial fortress designed to protect the rules exactly as they currently are.
And all that money powers a rapidly spinning revolving door between the regulators and the folks they're supposed to be regulating. Take former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb. Just 85 days, literally less than 3 months, after leaving the agency that regulates pharmaceutical companies, he joined the board of directors at Pfizer. And he's not some isolated anomaly either. As of 2025, 9 of the last 10 FDA commissioners have gone on to work for the pharmaceutical industry. Now, we really need to be completely neutral here and point out that this capture totally transcends political parties. Look at 2025, when HHS Secretary RFK Jr. came into office explicitly promising to close this exact revolving door. Yet by that spring, roughly 600 FDA reviewers were reportedly interviewing with pharma companies while they were actively supposed to be reviewing them. Even RFK Jr.'s own pick to run the FDA's drug center was hired directly from the industry. It just goes to show the gravity of this system outpulls politics, no matter who happens to be sitting in the big chair.
Section 3. The pushback. What actually works?
Here is where things get interesting. In January 2026, for the very first time in Medicare's 60-year history, the government finally used its leverage to directly negotiate drug prices instead of just handing over the manufacturer's list price. And the results? For major drugs like Eliquis and Jardiance, they secured discounts ranging from 38 to 79% off. This one move alone is projected to save Medicare $6 billion a year and save everyday patients $1.5 billion out of pocket. It proves that real leverage actually works. Now, to be totally fair and maintain our impartiality here, we do have to acknowledge the counterargument. Not every single high medical bill is purely the result of capture. The reality is, America has an aging population, we're a very wealthy nation, and our system is incredibly litigious.
High wages for medical staff and the fragmented nature of our multi-payer system genuinely drive up real underlying costs. Medicine is complex, and complex medicine is expensive. Serious economists agree that a decent chunk of our healthcare bill is simply what modern healthcare costs today, capture or no capture.
But while that complexity is real, the absolute clearest evidence of capture is what happens when the government actually decides to use its leverage. Direct negotiation works, but it immediately sparks a lobbying backlash. For instance, a 2025 law quietly widened exemptions for orphan drugs specifically to shrink which medications even qualify for those Medicare negotiations. On the flip side, when regulators changed a rule to stop overpaying for 2,000 of those upcoding-prone diagnoses we talked about, UnitedHealth's stock plummeted, wiping out years of gains practically overnight. The system absolutely responds when regulators finally decide to stop overpaying. And that brings us right to the core thesis of this explainer. Whether you are looking at a local certificate of need board, the Medicare residency budget, PBM contracts, or the revolving doors over at the FDA, the pattern just keeps repeating. The people with the absolute most at stake in a rule have an outsized hand in writing it. Regulatory capture, state capture, call it whatever you want, but now you know exactly where to look.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought to ponder. If this supposedly broken system can actually be fixed the very moment the government decides to use its leverage, why do we keep allowing the industries we regulate to hold the pen? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this data-driven look empowers you to see the healthcare system with fresh eyes. Until next time, keep asking questions.